What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel and to the next off-season recap. Luckily for us, we had some epic stuff that's been going down around the last week or so, and the first thing I wanted to address in this video are the big-time elephants in the room. Let's talk about Pelican getting traded to the Houston Outlaws in a buyout deal. This very well might go down as the biggest blockbuster trade of the offseason. Houston were really able to scoop up the reigning Rookie of the Year and a former MVP candidate. Think about how incredible that is. Do you really need any more proof that the Outlaws are not messing around this year? They dumped nearly everybody from a pretty good roster last year just to show that they mean serious business and that they're trying to win. Pelican joining Houston means absolutely ridiculous levels of flexibility on DPS. Dante on his own, I mean, he's already a star-level flex DPS, but now you add in Pelican and the possibilities suddenly become endless. I've seen a handful of people questioning how Dante and Pelican would work together, but it's really not that complicated. Dante fills out the Tracer and the Sombra needs, while Pelican provides an upgrade at things like Echo, May, and Pharah. Realistically, the two of them could absolutely coexist in a rotation, and surely there will be moments where they play at the same exact time. I like this. It says a lot about what the Outlaws are going for. Like many other teams, they're looking to push beyond their limits. Houston did not have any playoff or tournament success really in their Overwatch 1 era, and now they intend to fix that with a stacked roster. Pelican, Dante, and Piggy is an excellent start. The relationship is going to be there. It's strong. We know for a fact that Piggy gets along great with both of these players, so now it's just a matter of what happens next. This on paper is a major W for the Outlaws no matter how you slice it, but there's still a long way to go. They still do need a reliable hit scan player now that Happy is gone and a support line. But for now, still, this is a great start, and I hope that Outlaws fans are starting to get excited. Thinking about this from the Atlanta perspective, it further goes to show that for one, the rumors of them likely going fully Western are true, but two, the idea that Pelican might have wanted a trade also may be coming true thanks to what Sephi was saying on social media the other week. While it's pretty exciting to see how this transition goes for the Atlanta Reign, it definitely is kind of sucky to see their Korean talent move on to new opportunities. People like Iris and Pelican played such a critical role in the Reign's success, and replacing them could prove to be a challenge. I hope that the Atlanta Reign end up doing this right, because if they don't, I guarantee you there are going to be some very unhappy fans. Anyway, how about we go over another major headline? I'm talking about the Toronto Defiant scooping up Twilight from free agency. Talk about starting off your retooling process with a bang. Twilight is a huge pickup. It goes without saying that he was a top free agent at his position, but also in general. Twilight is like a generational talent basically, who immediately increases your team's overall ceiling. Aside from being incredibly explosive and having a lot of experience under his belt, Twilight is flexible, and I think sometimes people forget about something like that because he's been stuck on the Shock in a rotation the last couple of years. But he genuinely can be a difference maker on just about every flex support hero. I am very, very excited to see him be a full-time starter again. Watching that guy get rotated in and out this year, and last year even, was painful. Yeah, there was reason to feel happy for the guy. He was winning a championship and everything, but at the same time, you felt like he could just do more from an individual standpoint because he is a starting caliber player, you know what I mean? Toronto really went ahead though and upgraded their support position even though it was probably one of their bigger strengths last year. That's incredibly impressive, and if Twilight is the first signing they have in store, it's clear that they're ready to go all out on their new roster. Toronto management is making a statement much like the Outlaws. They are tired of being that team that nobody takes seriously. Clearly, they are ready to spend some serious money to make a team more suited towards KDG's vision and one that's built for success. If Toronto intends to pick up some other big names out there, it would be the first year they truly go all out on a single roster, because seasons 2 through 4 all kind of just saw them put out these rosters that nobody was writing home about. Hopefully, whatever they build can last more than a single season at the very least, because that's the long-term goal they have to start thinking about. As I've mentioned earlier, this team never really seems to think about the future. They get rid of most of their players every single year, and they're very committed to the present. It's a little frustrating if I'm being honest with you. So deep down, I'm praying that this year can be different and can show some sustainable success. It's going to be very interesting to see who else the Defiant go after as we head closer to the start of 2022. They're already off to a pretty solid start because of Twilight. Now let's see if they can keep it going. Next, let's take your attention over to the Seoul Dynasty. They went ahead and set up their foundation at DPS by firstly announcing the official return of Prophet and Fitz, but also adding Gen G DPS player Stalker to their ranks. Their co-president Arnold made it known that their goal is to build a flexible core DPS. The team recognizes how important this position is going to be in Overwatch 2, so they want to go big. Flexibility was the main priority, and that's kind of what they have right now with this current lineup. As I discussed in the previous recap, Prophet and Fitz coming back is a great start. I think spending big money on them is totally worth it given how productive they were last year. The two of them by themselves made for one of the better DPS lines in the league, but something they've always been lacking in the Prophet era was a rotational piece. Since he arrived back in 2020, it's been purely on the shoulders of him and Fitz. Enter Stalker now, who genuinely could be the solution to that problem. If you don't know much about Stalker, he played DPS for Seoul's Academy team, Gen G, and he played there for quite a bit, as he spent about 3 years developing there and biding his time until he turned 18. If you've never watched Gen G or Stalker, or you don't pay much attention to contenders, I highly recommend giving this guy a chance and just watch him play for a bit. I first took notice of him when watching the 2020 Gauntlet, and he instantly gave off a good first impression. Him and Tuyu played a pivotal role in Gen G's second place run, and what made Stalker's play so special was his flexibility. He really showed the ability to play a lot of everything. He made a lot of noise on Tracer in particular, but has also shown promise on Echo, Pharah, McCree, and Genji among others. He's a strong flex option who gives Seoul that extra bit of flexibility to potentially push their damage dealing capabilities to new heights. The only thing that some people might argue is that he plays a lot of the same things as Prophet. There's a fair bit of overlap for sure. However, in my opinion, that is by no means a bad thing. Yeah, in some scenarios, Stalker might just end up on the bench. But you have to think about the opportunities that open up because he's on the roster. There are going to be times where the meta calls for two things Prophet is really good on at once, and with Stalker on your team, you don't really have to worry about having like a weaker Echo or Tracer in the game, for example. That little bit of extra versatility can make the difference you're looking for. Sometimes it's the small things that really end up mattering. This could end up being an excellent decision on the part of Seoul. What do they have to lose? They already have Fitz and Prophet, and now you're just adding in an extra piece, and if he doesn't work out, that's okay. But just looking at it right now, that DPS line has incredible potential. Now it's a matter of surrounding them with good and reliable teammates. The Dynasty simply must have a productive offseason, or this high-ceiling DPS line is gonna go to waste. The number of opportunities is only going to shrink with every passing day, so it's time to make some moves. Next up, we have the San Francisco Shock officially bringing back Super. Not gonna lie, this was not something I was entirely expecting. While it's true he is the face of this franchise, it kind of seemed to me like the Shock were ready to move on, and for the longest time, I 100% believed that Super was going to retire to pursue full-time streaming at the end of 2021. But I guess that desire to compete is still present. The question is though, with the rumors of San Fran picking up numerous O2 Blast players looming, is Super even going to be the starting tank? He can absolutely fill out a lot of the different needs that the team needs, but whether he's the right fit or not, I'm not too sure. Just because of the synergy thing and maybe wanting to field a full Korean lineup. It really will depend on if the Shock end up signing any other Western players. If Super is back, you'd have to assume there's at least some interest. I'll leave it up to you to decide what you think of this. For the time being, this should be seen as a good move by the Shock, because Super, he is genuinely a good player, but also he's extremely marketable for this franchise, he's been a long-time member, and the fans love him. Whether he's the starter or not is kind of irrelevant, because it's a dub for the state of this fan base and their happiness. On to the next signing. Happy will be joining the Washington Justice for the 2022 season. I, for one, am a little unsure about this. It's definitely great that somebody picked up Happy. This guy is way too talented to not be sticking around. Happy has a super high ceiling and could undoubtedly make great contributions for the Justice. Him and Decay, I think that sounds like a pretty dangerous 1-2 punch on paper. He definitely makes for a nicer option over Jerry at the very least. He's got a better mechanical ceiling for sure, and he'll definitely open up some more compositions that the Justice could be comfortable utilizing. The stronger hit scan option for when Decay has to play other things is definitely nice, and I think just having a good dedicated sniper helps them. But the thing is, Happy doesn't necessarily solve a lot of the major problems this franchise is currently facing. A huge problem the Justice dealt with last year was inconsistency. Whether it was because of the hero pools or certain positions not showing up, the Justice could not play well for more than what seemed like a month at a time. And if you look at where some of those inconsistencies were stemming from, at least from a player standpoint, the second factor you're likely to look at aside from support is DPS. I've been critical of him multiple times this year already, and I feel I must repeat myself. Assassin had his ups and downs during his rookie year, and unless he improved a ton during this offseason, that might be a problem yet again. Trust me, it is by no means all his fault. This is a team game, but you know it as well as I do. Assassin is hot and Assassin is cold. He makes a lot of individual mistakes at times, and guess what? That's exactly what Happy provides you as well. He doesn't make a ton of crazy noticeable mistakes like whiffed EMPs and everything, but he definitely still does have his hot and cold moments. Happy looked impressive during the early season and definitely towards the end as well. But in between some of those inspiring performances came some non-factor showings. He wasn't necessarily making huge mistakes or playing really badly, but he just wasn't doing enough, you know? And that's the problem, right? It's very risky to add another hot and cold player to your core when you think about how important DPS is going to be in Overwatch 2. Happy is likable, and I think the potential is certainly present, but whether this was a good decision or not, well, that feels pretty up in the air. Next, we move on to some departures. The first is the Boston Uprising parting ways with Gaebullssi. I'd be lying to you if I said that this didn't upset me, because I had such high hopes that Gaebullssi could become a great off-tank option for the Boston Uprising. He showed off such great promise on WGS, and I figured he had a great chance of capitalizing on that potential since he was playing with his former teammates and head coach at Boston. Some things simply aren't meant to be, I suppose. Well, there's that, and that Punk honestly outplayed him because he had an excellent year. Gaebullssi really wasn't that bad, I just think that Punk was that much better. He was so much better, in fact, that Boston would rather play him than field a fully Korean lineup with Gaebullssi in there. As a result, Boston didn't feel a need to hold on to Gaebullssi. It makes sense. They've got their off-tank, so he was kind of expendable. It's disappointing, but that's the way things go sometimes. Maybe Gaebullssi gets another chance somewhere else. A lot of teams need new tanks, and I think that Gaebullssi has great experience, and he's shown he can be a part of a winning culture thanks to his WGS days. I believe in him to make it back to this league one day. Whether or not it's this year, I'm not too sure, but I do think that one day he will get another chance if he keeps on playing. On the topic of departures, the Gladiators made it official that Moth would not be returning for the 2022 season. Based off his declined option, this already seemed like the likely outcome, so no big surprises. From a more general standpoint though, it's crazy to think that a team does not have a lot of use for Moth currently. Moth's skill set just did not translate because Brig was so relevant. Paying that much for a guy who won't even play like half the time simply is not worth it. However, there could be more to this story. Moth very well might be considering retirement for all we know. As of this recording, he has yet to make any sort of LFT post on social media. Moth is absolutely taking the time to consider his future right now. If retirement is not in the cards though, I genuinely do wonder who is going to show interest. Despite Moth's reputation though, I think the number of bidders may not be as high as it should be just because it seems like a lot of teams aren't showing as much interest in big name main supports currently. They're focusing more on the DPS, I feel like. If there is one landing spot that makes sense outside of like a potential shock return, I guess, it would be the Houston Outlaws to me. They still have interest in utilizing a mixed roster, and I think that Moth would be an excellent addition to their squad. The Outlaws appear to be going hard this offseason, so the addition of Moth wouldn't surprise me and would kind of help, just continue the trend, if anything. Hopefully Moth, no matter where he goes, finds a new home if he keeps playing, because it would be a shame to see his legacy end in such a sad way. Also joining the official departure list is Hoppa. He is not rejoining the Fusion in 2022. Given that he was mostly a mercenary who came in to help the team get by on short notice because of visa issues, it's not entirely surprising. Despite Hoppa being a pleasant surprise this year, one can't help but feel like Philly could probably do better because there's so many young prospects and potential veterans who could simply offer more. I'm pretty sure that Philly had interest in Gaebullssi last year, so maybe they pick him up as their off-tank specialist, and think about somebody like Muse at main tank. He's right there for the taking as a replacement for Mono. The Fusion have options, so there's really no point in settling for what they already had, which is mediocrity or slightly above average play, I guess you could say. No, Hoppa wasn't mediocre. I'll say slightly above average. As for Hoppa, I am still of the belief that this year gave him a chance to earn another opportunity elsewhere. As a longtime veteran who looked pretty reliable this year, some teams may be willing to pick him up as like this low-risk, high-reward budget option of sorts. I could totally see him heading over to like Vancouver or maybe the Valiant if they choose to not go Chinese. If you think there's any other places where Hoppa could go, let me know in the comments below. Anyway, now on to a few retirements. Both OGE and BQB announced the end of their playing careers around the same time. For OGE, I believe this makes sense. There's been a lot of ups and downs, and I think that Florida was arguably the last chance he had to prove his value. It's a little upsetting to see his chapter as a player end here, just because the potential was always there. When things were going his way, he was a reliable main tank. The problem was the inconsistencies and the breaks he was often taking. It really sucks too, because if his luck was better, he genuinely could have been one of the better main tanks this league has ever seen. I think back to what he showed us during the May Melee this year and his early days on Dallas and can't help but feel sad. OG produced some lovely memories that are unforgettable. I can still vividly remember that time at the Dallas homestand where he was crying tears of joy in front of the fans, or him simply playing alongside legends of the game like Seagull and Taimu in 2018. During those moments, I couldn't help but think to myself that this guy might end up being the next big thing. Despite that never panning out though, he still did have a somewhat successful career. Him and many of his fans know it could have been a lot more, but hey, that's professional sports. Some people simply do not fulfill their true potential for a bunch of different reasons. The good news though is that OG is not done yet. He is ready to start a new chapter as a coach, just like Toby and Rascal. OG is a very relatable human being, I feel like. He's very kind and he works hard, and I feel like he'd really care a lot about the growth and development of his players. I have high hopes for him to thrive in this new role and look forward to seeing what opportunities come his way. Looking at this from BQB's perspective, it is also really sad. After some initial struggles on a terrible Season 2 Mayhem squad, BQB transformed into a reliable and confident-looking hit scan. I used to meme on the guy really hard, but then he seriously went out there and earned my respect during Season 3, as well as many of you probably, as he improved a lot in such little time. Seemingly overnight, at least that's what it felt like, he became a top Ashe and McCree player while helping the Mayhem achieve the only true success they have ever seen. I'm very disappointed to see it end this way, because I personally would have loved to see him join a new team, as I believe there's many of them who could have used his help. But alas, BQB is ready to move on. As stated in his tweet longer, he has a new dream he wants to pursue now, and in order to achieve said dream, he has to go to school. And he believes that it's better to go now before it's too late. Honestly, good for BQB. I'm glad he's pursuing happiness over all else, even though this means he's not going to be in the league anymore. I respect this choice a lot because he definitely could have kept earning a salary playing Overwatch if he wished to. It's not easy to make this kind of choice, so mad respect. Hopefully he finds happiness and success in the next chapter of his life. Looking to some coaching news now, the Shock announced the return of NineK to their coaching staff. After spending some time managing Paris and coaching Philly, NineK seems to be a little homesick. Him and Krusty are ready to re-establish their combined power and the original Shock winning culture. It's interesting that he'd be so willing to sacrifice his head coaching opportunities just to be an assistant again. I suppose he's doing what makes him happy because he enjoys being alongside Krusty. Supposedly, Philly really did not want him to leave, so greater opportunities were clearly available. But hey, all the power to him. Not everybody's willing to pursue happiness over everything else, like a potentially higher paying job or higher status, so good on him, and good for the Shock as well, because that coaching staff looks pretty darn promising in its current state. Next up, we have the Outlaws officially bringing back Junkbuck. After the solid regular season this franchise just had under him, this is more than deserved. And like I said previously, with Harsha now gone, this is purely his team to command. Junkbuck has proven himself to be a good coaching option for a team looking to make the playoffs by legitimate means for the first time. I'm happy for Junkbuck, who's proving himself no longer under Krusty's wing, and I'm happy for the Outlaws. It's a good pairing. Houston haven't done everything perfectly yet this offseason, but they've managed to build a good core and make some nice moves. Also joining in on the coaching news is the Florida Mayhem, who brought in Gunba as their new head coach. I don't believe I covered this yet, but Kookie parted ways with Florida a bit ago to pursue new opportunities as they enter a full-on rebuild. It's sad, but as stated before, the team was kind of ready to start fresh, and a fresh start begins with Gunba at head coach. For those of you who may not be familiar with him, he recently was coaching in the pro Valorant scene, but also coached Overwatch for quite some time before then. He was an assistant on the Valiant 2 different times, and he spent time with the Uprising as well. And on top of that, he was the coach of the 2018 Australian World Cup team. The point is, Gunba has been around the block. Coaching is practically in his DNA. The guy has a knack for teaching and leading others, and Albert, the VP of Esports for the Florida Mayhem, said exactly that. He's got a good track record, an eye for talent, and has shown the ability to adapt quickly to new games as seen by his transition from Overwatch to Valorant. Albert believes that he is qualified, and who am I to disagree because I myself have a lot of respect for Gunba. The only question is, how will he do as a head coach? He's never done that before at the Overwatch League level. It's a brand new challenge, and he's working with a mixed roster built from scratch. And it's hard to say if the Mayhem will even get him any premier talent. This might be a developmental thing, or perhaps the Mayhem could become the next Paris Eternal depending on what prospects they sign. Either way, at least the Mayhem seem to have maybe started off on the right foot with Gunba. Florida fans aren't super happy right now due to recent events, so I think that getting someone who is qualified and respectable is a great way to begin the retrusting process and to help weather the storm. Now we wait and see who they pick up from a talent perspective and we judge from there. And finally, the Fusion announced the signing of former Guangzhou Charge main support Chara to their coaching staff. It's in a different role now, but Chara is finally back in the league. He's always been a great leadership figure, I feel, and the intelligence has always been there. Chara joins Jin as part of this new-looking coaching staff on a rebuilding Philly team. Given that Chara was also a part of Fusion's academy team, this signing makes sense. Jin is looking to add assistants he deems trustworthy, and what better person to join your squad than somebody you've been working with for the last half year? Not to mention that they used to work with one another on the Guangzhou Charge back in the day when Chara was still a player. There's clearly a strong bond between those two, and I dig it. The only issue/concern I have is that we've seen Jin show inconsistencies in the past, and Chara has also never coached a team at this level before. There is a little bit of a reason to feel scared, I feel, because of that. But at the same time, there's reason to feel excited due to their recent success. Either way, it's kind of a gamble, but a gamble is kind of what the Fusion need at this point, because after all the shortcomings over the years, it's time to go big or go home. Otherwise, you gotta just blow things up if things don't work. And that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. There's been some dull moments at times throughout the last week, but some days have also been jam-packed with excitement to make up for it. And there's only more to come, so be sure to give this video a like and subscribe if you want to keep up with all of the latest news. And let me know what you think of some of the big-time moves that happened, like Twilight to Toronto or Pelican to Houston, among others, in the comments below. And as always, thank you all so much for watching my content. I appreciate you all so much. And until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.